You're watching the Big Picture Business Program, Benchmark. In our feature segment today, we talk to Dr. Rohan Fernando, Managing Director and Chief Executive of Aitken Spence Plantation Management. In this exclusive interview, Dr. Fernando discusses the future of the tea and rubber industries, the issues facing plantation workers, as well as emerging markets for Ceylon tea and rubber. Let's listen in. Thank you for coming in to be in our show, Rohan. Now, there have been conflicting signals, both good and bad, as to where the plantations industry is heading. Now, in the current context, how is the plantations industry faring?
Well, I must say the industry, particularly in the last financial year, had a very good run, and most crops, that is tea, rubber, palm oil, did extremely well. Of course, tea to a lesser degree. But unfortunately, since the new wage negotiations, the tea sector particularly has taken a very strong beating, and it's going to take time to recover, particularly against the backdrop of very low prices that we are experiencing at the moment. Fortunately, rubber and palm oil, which some of the other plantation companies have, has been sustaining it, and we hope that tea prices will improve to give us a better tomorrow.
Now, you mentioned that it's been a bad year for tea, but however, it's been a good year for rubber and also palm oil. Now, what are the chief issues that are impacting the two industries that are doing well, rubber and palm oil?
Two fundamental reasons where the rubber and palm oil is concerned. Rubber prices have been extremely good since last around April, and palm oil prices have been sustained and stable. The labor utilization in rubber and palm oil is far lower than tea, almost less than half. So therefore, the wage cost is much lower, and particularly when the prices are good, the margins are much better, and they both have been a very sustainable industry.
The tea industry, however, did very well last year, but there have been warnings in recent times where critics have even said that it's on the verge of the brink of collapse. Now, critics are pointing to international markets and Sri Lanka's eroding competitiveness in the face of rising costs. What are the issues that are facing the tea industry at this point of time?
There are two chief reasons for it. One is that wage increases in the plantation sector have not been keeping in line with productivity. Just to give you an example, I think the increase in wages since 1992 has been something like 500%. Phenomenal increase. I don't think any other industry or sector would have such an increase and still survive. But fortunately, the tea industry has survived, but I feel that this situation is going to crumble unless we are going to have a comparable increase in productivity and a change in mindset from everybody. Because what everybody feels is that the tea sector is resilient, that it has weathered many a storm. We are not a domestic industry. We have to compete internationally with other countries or other producers whose cost of production is much lower. Maybe our quality is much higher, but ultimately price plays a very major role. So I feel that the tea industry in Sri Lanka, that is all the stakeholders, need to take a hard look at this and see that these cost increases which are not compensated with productivity increases are stopped. Otherwise, there's going to be a huge economic impact, and it's going to be a huge blow to this country.
You did say that the tea industry in the current light is not sustainable, but as a country we are very dependent on this industry where our foreign exchange income is concerned. Do you think that we should be moving away from this dependence and looking at other opportunities elsewhere?
Yes and no. For instance, I mean, we all feel that the tea industry has still a lot to offer. It's just that our model has been lopsided. But if corrective measures are taken to balance cost, to encourage more people to invest in tea replanting, for instance, the high-grown tea areas, today nobody is going to invest money to replanting high-grown tea because the returns are so low. So we need to encourage that by making that area attractive. In moving away, I also feel that what Sri Lanka has is land. Companies have diversified into palm oil. Palm oil has been a sustainable crop. Enormous extents of palm oil in Malaysia and Indonesia. Rubber has been extremely buoyant. And some of the other areas are hydropower is another area that offers a lot of opportunities. Many companies and private owners are looking at tourism with the tourism boom in this country. So what I feel is what we should encourage is flexibility for land use, because investment will flow where the returns are. Nobody is going to invest in areas purely on sentimental reasons. It's like the tourism industry in Sri Lanka now. Everybody wants to get into hotels, whereas before the war ended, people were selling their hotels. So I would say that's the model and the approach that we should follow.
After the break, Dr. Rohan Fernando talks about the impact of the cost of energy and fertilizer on the plantations, emerging markets for Ceylon tea and rubber, and the importance of sound international relations for business and trade. So don't go away. Thanks for staying with us. We now have more excerpts from our exclusive interview with Dr. Rohan Fernando. You mentioned that Kenya's competitive advantages would be the good quality soil as well as high productivity. Now Sri Lanka has been known for its fantastic taste of tea. Are we losing our competitive edge here? Doesn't it still remain as Sri Lanka producing some of the world's best cup of tea, so to speak?
Absolutely. Ceylon tea is still regarded as the best in quality, and that will undoubtedly remain. But it also remains that there are, like in any market, there are niches. Then there is a mass market. So the mass market calls for a tea where your cost of production is lower, where you can sell at a relatively lower cost. And there are several new producers apart from Kenya and other East African countries. There is Vietnam, there is Turkey, there is Argentina, who are all flooding the market with cheap quality tea, even Indonesia or Bangladesh. So we need to remember that you have to compete at different levels of the market. You can't always compete at the top champagne level.
How does the cost of energy and fertilizer impact the industry?
Well, fortunately, we need to commend the government for that. A very attractive fertilizer subsidy was given this year a few months ago, which has tremendously helped to offset the major wage increase. Fertilizing at these levels of cost would definitely improve production, would improve soils and ensure that we have a better yield this year. In terms of energy costs have been rising, and we don't seem to have an answer for that. I think maybe when some of the other mega projects of the government starts producing energy costs may come down. But we also need to look at alternate energy. There are hydropower opportunities in the plantations, and there are many companies who have been exploiting these. So I would imagine that this is another area of concern, the high cost of energy. Another area which I want to touch on in this interview is the repercussions of global warming and this whole question about this carbon footprint. Now, today you notice that weather is very inconsistent, and we see various other calamities like earth slips, floods, which are all defects of global warming. And global warming and climate change is directly impacts on agriculture, and this is another area that all plantation companies and producers, not only in the plantation sector but in agriculture, will have to be concerned for the future, because no longer can you predict the weather, no longer can you plan your agricultural practices keeping in mind the weather pattern of the previous year. And you can see all over the world there are new pests coming up, new other calamities, which is something that Sri Lanka needs to be ready. And I feel that although there's a lot of discussion, a lot of debate on this area of global warming and climate change, we are not adequately poised to meet the challenge.
That's a very valid point, Rohan. And looking at emerging markets, are there any emerging markets for Ceylon tea and rubber, and are we exploiting them?
Well, I would imagine now one area, one country that we haven't been able to exploit adequately is China, the vast Chinese market. We have also not been able to make inroads into India. Whether those two markets are adequately valuable to the Sri Lankan producers or exporters is another question, because always I would imagine that a market has to do with value. You can sell tea, but at what price, and what is the customer in those countries willing to pay is what we need to look at. At the moment, our best markets are the CIS, Middle East, Japan, some areas of Europe, where we get a very good price for our tea, and where Ceylon tea is very well known for its quality. But I would imagine that China and India poses a lot of opportunities, and with those economies emerging stronger and stronger, there would be opportunities.
What about our marketing efforts? Are we actually looking at these new destinations where we can market our tea?
Like in anything else, there is a lot more to be done. I believe one area that the Sri Lanka Tea Board is hampered in is funds for promotion, which I am told that the plantation minister and the Sri Lanka Tea Board is examining, trying to address it in a positive way. So I'm sure they would come up with a strategy to exploit that area.
Given that the Middle East and Russia are conventionally our major tea export destinations, how important is it that Sri Lanka's international relations are seen as sound, not only from a country image point of view, but the problems we are grappling with at this point of time, whether it's human rights, and how do these affect our business and trade prospects in the larger trading world?
Yeah, I would imagine whether you trade or not, the business relations with any country has to be cordial, because sometimes you don't know when opportunities would emerge. We are told that there has been some issues with regards to dollar payment to some of the Middle East countries because of some of these upheavals, but these are areas which need to be adequately addressed at the highest level, because I don't think Sri Lanka can afford to have any sort of problems caused by any of these external factors, because what will happen is we are vulnerable to another competitor moving into any of these markets, unless our foreign embassies and anybody and the other international civil servants working for the government take adequate steps at addressing these areas.
That was Dr. Rohan Fernando of Aitken Spence Plantation Management. Up next, we focus on the 5 most respected entities in Sri Lanka today. That's in the Voice of Business.